Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're just going to hold for a few moments while we bring some additional colleagues in through the doors, and we'll start the recording and session as soon as we've reached our participant numbers. Thanks for joining us. Yeah, thanks for your question, Corinda. Katie's just popping you an answer. We'll send and publish all of these sessions online post the event, so you'll be able to go to the Digital Social Care website and see a playback of the video and all of the slide decks there. I'll just hold on another moment. I can still see the numbers of participants joining. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to our fourth Digital Social Care Adopting Social Care Records Masterclass session. This is the week before Christmas, so I'm ever hopeful that we're going to have a good number of participants. I can see people joining us today, but I know it's an incredibly busy week for everyone. So without further ado, I'll make a start and we'll introduce our panel speakers today. We are joined by a veritable smorgasbord of really interesting members today. So first and foremost is Theo Jarrett, joining us from Lincolnshire County Council. I think you could say hello, good afternoon, Theo, to everybody. And our other colleagues from Home Care, which is a specialist learning disability service in Lincolnshire. That's Luke Murphy, who's a positive behaviour support manager, and Hazel Ashmore, the senior clinical lead there, will be joining us for the second part of the presentation. We've also got Melanie Weatherly, who is herself a provider in the Lincolnshire area. So it's a full trio of Lincolnshire colleagues today talking about what it's like to be in an ultra rural geography, and also implementing through the Commissioner's eyes, the providers and the Care Association, what you need to implement digital social care records within organisations and systems across the care system. So without further ado, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the project. So digital social care, which is an amalgamation of care provider associations, have come together to work with NHSX and deliver a support service to care providers thinking about digital transformation within their organisation. We offer a whole range of different services and tools, which you'll be able to find out more about later in the session from my colleague Claire. But the most important part of our journey is supporting providers to make informed decisions and implement operational systems that are going to be fit for the long term, and also ensure safe, appropriate sharing of information and the right information available to the right people, whether that's colleagues working within services, people drawing upon services themselves, families and residents. We need to think about the functionality of digital care records within care and support services. Next slide, please, Katie. So, as I said, Digital Social Care is a partnership between the Care Provider Alliance, and it's funded by the NHS. And it's a dedicated space to give support, information, guidance, tools, and tips to providers. You can see on the right side a little screenshot of our website, which is really easy to navigate and talks about things like sharing care records, thinking about changing software and equipment within your services, all of the latest digital cybersecurity guidance, and helping you make that digital transformation for 2023, which is why we're doing the masterclasses today, talking about digital care planning records. Next slide, please. So this is, as I said, the fourth in our masterclass series, and what we're hoping to take you on is the journey of go live, that intrepid part of the process when you've done all the planning, you've talked to colleagues around your organisation, you've talked with the people drawing upon services themselves, and also we are ready to push the button and make digital a reality within the services. So from a commissioner's perspective, I welcome Theo to talk to us in more detail about what's it like going live in a digital space with the care and support providers he works with every day. Theo.
Okay, thank you, Victoria. So yes, my role at Lincolnshire County Council really spans a number of areas, but I do speak as a commissioner. Most of the care provided in Lincolnshire is external of the local authority. We do have a small number of internal provision for adults, but largely it's mostly commissioned. So we are a commissioner, but also more importantly, perhaps we've got the role in terms of ensuring that the market for social care is sufficient. So that strays over into those care and support providers that we don't directly commission, but we have responsibility for that whole market. And I think that's where our view comes from in terms of our developing our digital strategy for supporting adult social care in the county. We started this about 3 years ago, and it's something that we've developed over that time. And clearly in the pandemic, we've had a slightly different approach, but just recently we've become a digitising social care records accelerator site. So this is something that's led us to this point where we've got links with providers and experience of working with providers that are going live with digitising social care records. Okay, so if we can have the next slide, please. Okay, so just a bit of background about our work. Now, as I mentioned, we've got a lead in terms of sustainability and provision of social care within the adult care market in the county, but we're not doing it on our own. We've got a strategic relationship with Lincolnshire Care Association, who enable us to speak to the care providers, and we've worked with Linker, the short form of Lincolnshire Care Association. Worked with Linker probably for about 3 or maybe getting on for 4 years in different projects that have really built the foundation for where we're getting to now. So ensuring that care providers are supported in having the right data security, taking them through the data security toolkit, reaching standards met, implementing some of the tools that we expect to see in care providers, and supporting care providers to do that. Latest in this journey is the digitising social care records. This is something that we started in September. But what effectively we're doing with Linker, so the County Council and Linker representing the care providers are working together to represent social care in the local integrated care system. So the NHS providers have got a certain language that they speak, and the commissioners, but it's really us working with Linker to make sure that the social care voice is heard. So if we just move on from this slide. Okay, so we feel quite strongly in Lincolnshire that we've laid some foundations, and we've got knowledge of what is out there in terms of digital maturity, what support might be needed. What we're looking to do is to support providers in terms of adopting digitised social care records. That will help us in the local authority, but more importantly will support people who are receiving care. We've got programmes within the local authority to digitise our social care, case management systems, payment systems. We need the other end of the line to be at that point as well. So we're serious about supporting the market in that respect. But what we are looking for is to move towards a place, and I mentioned about the integrated care system, is that social care becomes a trusted member of that system. So social care workers, the data that we keep, the records that we keep, the language that we speak in the integrated care system with the NHS partners is trusted and is understood. So in terms of our digitising social care record journey, we started it in September. We knew we had some work to do to understand where we were in the county. If we move on to the next slide, thanks, Katie. So what we've seen from the providers that we've been working with through Linker and through the staff that work for me is where it works well, it's where we've got a clear plan. So if we're able to articulate who it is, who we're going to be working with, when it will happen, who it will affect. So a clear plan for going live might be looking at particular as a going live, a small go live to build up, or it might be a big bang go live. We need to start with a mixture of quick wins and key areas of improvement. The quick wins where we've really noticed that there has been a benefit and people have been able to start quickly, providers have been able to start quickly, it's really seizing upon where there's an energy and a real buy-in for digitisation. So it's seizing on the enthusiasm and using that to create key successes, be able to articulate that and being able to demonstrate that, use case studies, quotes, examples of things going well and the benefits that it brings to be able to bring others on board. And then the third thing here is don't underestimate the time it will take. We've got a number of digital programs supporting the care sector in Lincolnshire at the moment. Over the past year, every single one of them has been affected in some way by the pandemic and also by the pressures of providing care in the current situation that we're in. So the care always has to be prioritised, where we've got care workers, supervisors, managers, coordinators who are being asked to work on development or work on planning for going live with digitised care records. We've had a rule in the book to say the care is prioritised. So if we need to, we will wait until the right time. Okay, and we can move on to the next slide. And I think this is all to do with planning. So explaining the process to our staff, and that staff both within the council, so social care assessment staff, support staff, and also to care workers. Share the benefits, understand what the benefits are to the individuals that we're working with, and also to the staff. How will it make their life different? How will it make their life better in terms of being able to provide that care? Reassuring constantly. It's going to be different for people, and it's going to be a case of there may be instances where people are less assured about where their job role is leading, but actually it's about supporting and enabling them to do the care that they're there to do. Include residents and relatives. So these are key people in terms of being able to articulate the impact that it's having on them. There may be times when actually things take slightly longer, things that might be slightly different for them. We need to be explaining that and sharing the benefits with them. And something that Melanie maybe put in here, which is keep smiling. I didn't put this in because obviously I work for a council. We don't smile in the council, but keep smiling. It's worth it in the end. And that is probably the overview. I know the detail is going to come from Hazel and Luke in the next presentation.
Yeah, that's really helpful. I did like the keep smiling towards the end, and I was wondering who'd snuck that in. So it's good
Not
to
me.
see.
Yeah.
It's good to see that definitely was something that you could bring to the table. Thank you for that. We're going to hand over to Hazel Ashmore, Senior Clinical Lead, and Luke Murphy, Positive Behaviour Support Manager at Home from Home Care. Welcome and good afternoon.
Hi, thanks very much, and thank you, Phil. That was really good. So we are a provider who have fully adopted an IT platform and the use of digital care planning and digital care records. And I think what we're going to do, if we go on to the next slide, please, there's a couple of bullet points. So we're going to go through how we apply our digital measures in place, and we're also going to talk through when you go live, what to expect, and some key points maybe to help take away from this. But just a little bit of context. Home from Home Care is an adult residential support provider in Lincolnshire with 11 homes. The majority of those currently are rated as outstanding, and without the digital information that we have, I feel like we might not have been as able to evidence a lot of the good work that we do. So hopefully some of the takeaway points from this will be not just some of the challenges that you can expect when you go live with a digital platform, but some of the immediate benefits. What I do like to get across is that we're not selling IT, we're not an IT company. We provide residential support, and part of the journey with regards to developing the IT platform that we use is we've just kind of experienced challenges when supporting people and working with people and trying to overcome barriers. And the use of information and technology and having information digitalized has been exceptional in supporting us to do this. So Hazel and I will be looking at this from the perspective of clinicians. So I'm looking at quality of life outcomes, and Hazel will be looking at primary healthcare needs. And what I would say is that with regards to digital records, it's not just about the things that Hazel and I are looking at, but obviously these are applicable to many different faculties within an organisation. So, for example, we look at things like rota systems, KPIs, finances, HR integrated management systems. All of these things are applicable, but just for context, Hazel and I are more likely to be looking at the clinician side of things here because that's kind of our bag. And so I think we've got a couple more bullet points. We could just fast forward for those, please. Yeah, so our digital journey, I think it's been about 17 years in the making. It's been a long ride. And as I said, we're just very keen to have as much information as possible to inform our decision making. And having information written down somewhere or care plans in a folder gathering dust somewhere is not the most effective way to do that. So our digital journey has been a long one, and it's kind of a never-ending road. And I think one of the things we'll be looking at is when you go live is that itch, that insatiable itch that you need to scratch with more information, because once you realize you can collect information in a certain way, well, it opens up avenues to try and explore and find information in other areas as well. So yeah, that's quite fun. And again, the applications of digital records will be Hazel and I going through some examples how we as an organisation capture and use information via our IT platform. And yeah, I'll give a bit more information on what to expect when going live, if that's okay. So if we go to the next slide, please, Hazel's going to be looking at some of our applications of our digital system.
Okay, so I chose something that I think no matter what kind of care provider you are, I think we're all familiar with the toileting chart. So hopefully this will make sense. So in terms of starting off with the data that we've got, the old school way of doing it, or the most common way of doing it, would be to write that on a piece of paper. So we've got the date, the time, somebody's had their bowels open, what did it look like, was there any fluid, or all of that kind of stuff. And that basically gives us the raw data. The disadvantages of that are that, if I want to know what's happened with a certain individual or certain resident, I've got to go and find that piece of paper. Piece of papers can go missing. You might not be able to read handwriting, especially if there's a doctor that's written it. Sorry if there's any doctors on here. But if we go on to the next bit, if we then digitize those records, we've got an improvement already. We can read what it says more easily. It's a lot more transferable. Rather than having to photocopy or fax that, we can now transfer that information between different people who need to see that. But essentially, it's still only half the picture, because we've still got exactly the same information. It's just in a more accessible format. So as Luke was saying, we've got this itch, and it's kind of a bit addictive. So we wanted to go on to the next level. So if you just press again, thank you. So what we've done is said, right, okay, well, what can we do with this information actually? How can we present it in a way that allows us as clinicians to actually use it to make decisions about people's care and support? So that same data that was in that form, when it's presented as a graph, you can see there that there's the stool chart numbers are on there. The reds are the 6s and 7s, and the greens are the kind of normal shaped bowel movements. And what this essentially is given us is it's given that individual, that resident, a voice, especially if they can't speak for themselves. It's very powerful. We introduced a medication in the example that you can see at a certain point, and we were very clearly able to see the effect of that medication on this person's IBS. So it's very clear to see, you know, the bowel chart has shown us this has helped my IBS. I'm feeling happy because every time we record an activity, we put what the perceived mood of that individual is. So we can see that happiness has gone up. And we can also see that engagement has gone up because their activity involvement has gone up. So it's really powerful stuff. Not only is it more accessible and it's more easily able to evidence it to commissioners and to CQC, etc., but actually it's giving you information that's useful as clinicians to improve people's outcomes. And next slide, please. So when we're looking at the whole digital process, I find it easy to split it into these three areas. So when you're first thinking about care planning, you're looking at identification. So what is the needs assessment? What does that person need? Any screening tools that you've done? What are the risks? Actually, that's your minimum kind of compliance, that you know what that person's needs and you've written it down. And then we're looking at the prevention. So, okay, we know what the problems are or what the needs are, what we're going to do about that. So it's about that effective care and support. So it's making that care plan actually accessible and easily be readable by the members of staff that are supporting that person. So it's got to be person-centered planning. Then we need to look at the training and development. It's okay saying, right, this person needs suctioning, for example, if actually the staff don't know how to do that. And then observations, is it actually working? You know, is the bowel chart, the fluid chart, the seizure chart, incidents, whatever it is that we're looking at, we need to be able to see, well, how effective is that? And again, if you have that in a digital format, it makes it a lot more accessible. And then in terms of the management, this is where we can get that end bit on the previous slide of really making a difference and seeing what actually is working in terms of outcomes for that particular individual. So we can look at monitoring and alerts. So we've said something needs to happen weekly. How do we know that it's happened? Well, if it's on a digital system, you can set up the system to say, by the way, you wanted this to happen last week and it hasn't happened. Or it has happened, but it's outside of the parameters that you said was normal for that individual. So you're getting that effective kind of monitoring of that person's well-being constantly. And it also allows you to give a lot more objective and easily transferable information to practitioners outside of your organisation, such as, you know, epilepsy specialists, cardiologists, whatever it may be. You can very clearly say, you did X and this is the result of it. And next slide, please. So this is just some examples of the way that we've done that. So, you know, you've got something that you've said in the care plan needs to be done. So we need to do an observation. COVID, obviously, everybody's familiar with the twice daily temperatures. So we need to do a temperature, and you can see at the bottom there, I've been able to say these are the parameters of what a normal temperature is. So rather than checking everybody's temperature every day, actually it's recorded by the support staff, and we get an immediate alert if it's gone outside of that. If you can press again for me, please. Okay, and then the same for a clinical task. If we've asked for something to be done, we can determine what it is that we want the staff to put in there as well. So we can determine what kind of information. So we can say it's got to be in kilograms, not stones, for example. And the next again, please. And again, there's just some more examples of the kinds of things that you could have on there and be easily be able to check. And again, please. Okay. So in terms of making the care plans accessible, what we found from our experience was we had some really good and some really poor care plans. And even the really detailed ones, because they were so detailed, actually they were like 23,000 words. So it's kind of, if I rocked up to do a shift, it's like, well, do you want me to support that individual, or do you want me to read the care plan? Because I'm not going to have time to do both. So what we've worked really hard at, and we're still trying to achieve it, is to make sure that we've got the right information in the right place for the purpose that it's needed. So what we call our holistic needs, which is basically like the care plan categories, is like the top level description of the needs and the support that's required. However, the detailed outcomes and the steps and the support that's required is within our diary entries. So if you just reveal the next few steps for me, please. Yeah, so at the top, when somebody opens a diary, and Luke's going to go into this in more detail just to see how simple it is for the user, because I know one of the concerns is that a user is going to find it difficult to do, that it's really complicated, and we've worked really hard at making it simple. So at the top, you've got your risk assessment. The control measures automatically pull through, tells you the stuff that you need to think about before you even start that task or activity. Then the care delivery is the bit of the care plan that is relevant to that particular task, so how the staff can do it. And the final one, which Luke's going to go into more detail, if you just click again for me, please, is the separate steps that from the individual's point of view, what have they actually achieved and what level of support did they need? And next slide, please. So that's just an example of how simple, to go back to the toileting example, how easy it is. Just add in a toileting diary, saying yes or no, did they pass urine? It then brings you up your chart, and you literally just click on it with what has happened. So really, really quick and simple with 2 or 3 clicks. And next, please. And that's what you get out of it. At the other end, you can then look at all of that information, see whether somebody is well hydrated, whether that's changed or over time, and gives you lots of more information. Next, please.
Great. Well, thank you very much, Hazel. So we're going to be looking at, what can happen when you do go live. And if you just press the next tab for me, please. It's just really critical that when you're doing this, you remember why you're doing it in the first place, right? So you've made this decision to transfer the way that you are doing things, the way that you're recording information, the way that you're collecting information, or you're reporting and recording processes. Maybe you're moving away completely from paper and you're going onto some sort of digital system. And there's a reason for that, and I think it's really important that you bear that in mind. So some common reasons might be that something has happened and you don't really want it to happen again, and you think to yourself, oh, if only we'd known X, Y, and Z. And using a digital platform is probably the best and most effective way to be aware of those happenings on. It might be simply that you want to enhance the support that you're delivering, and moving away from paper and using a digital record is going to enhance the support delivery that it can only ever help. It's only going to make it more effective. It might be to save time, so hours. I think we're all familiar with the fact that hours are kind of the currency in health and social care. It's very difficult to try and get more hours sometimes from people and from commissioners, and trying to make the most of those hours is the most critical thing that you can do. For us, as well as all of those things, it's also been about evidencing things as well. So as Hazel's alluded to, when you have all this information in a set location, it's very easy and very effective to extract that information and present it to people, right? It's very, very easy. And we'll go through some of the examples of what we very quickly extract and report to the relevant key stakeholders. So if we go through to the next slide, please. What can happen on the day? Well, it might go wrong. There might be some sort of disruption. We've had it before where the Wi-Fi has gone down and we didn't actually, for some reason, think about that. So you need to have some sort of contingency plan in place. It might be, oh, crikey, some sort of catalytic, error has happened. We need to maybe continue with what we're doing until the IT issue has been resolved. With the best planning in the world, it can still go wrong, unfortunately. So just make sure you have a contingency plan for if there is an IT disruption. The next bullet point will be user error. Now, this is a new system, and I do strongly suggest that you pilot this before you switch it on. I think Theo mentioned the Big Bang. If you want to do that, great. I would suggest, if you have the capability to do so, if you are switching on a new feature or new way of doing things, I'd maybe try a location. So we will trial one of our residential services at one time rather than all 11. Or if it's a particular piece of software and it's quite specific or niche, you might want to use it with a specifically identified clientele group, right? So if it's something around digitally recording epilepsy or seizures or anything like that, you might want to select a small sample group for people to trial that with. So I'd strongly suggest some sort of pilot before you go live. But when you do, realistically, they're the two things that are likely to happen, right? A bit of IT, a bit of disruption, and user error. And if you go on to the next few bullet points, please, you'll probably be apprehensive and switching this on. You've probably spent a lot of time, a lot of planning, a lot of money, a lot of resource in developing this and getting it up and running. You're going to be apprehensive. Is this going to work? It's just going to do what we wanted it to. The next bullet point, well, I mean, you're very hopeful that it's going to go well. And the last one, you're probably really excited, actually. You know, you're a bit nervous, you are a bit apprehensive, but you're very excited about what this is going to do and where this is going to lead to. Because if you press the next tab for me, this is a big commitment. And it might not seem like it when you switch this on, but one of the, you know, the mantras that we use is, in the back of your mind, you will know if things are working well or things are not working particularly well, or you might have a gut feel, but you don't necessarily have the information readily available to you. Well, switching to a digital platform and having this information really readily available is daunting. It really is. And you cannot unknow what you now know. So when you switch it on, you might be alerted to some stuff that you kind of thought wasn't working very well, but now you're immediately drawn to it and you can't not know that anymore. So this is a real big commitment, and it might sound strange, but just be ready for that. If you go to the next slide, please. Oh, and again, please. So this is a very small overview of what we use for our home managers, and these are different categories for different frequencies and different measures. That's good for us, as in there's a lot of greens, there's a lot of zeros. I assure you, when we first switched this on, there were a lot of reds, and we were like, oh my God, turn it off, you know. But you can't, you now know what happens. So you might see a tab that says core team actions for one of the homes. I remember when we switched on that feature, one home had 700 actions. I just thought, right, okay, well, that's where we start. Now, when you switch this on, if you can go onto the next slide for us, please. As Hazel said, you have the data now, you're provided with information, and you gain intelligence from that. This newfound data, this newfound intelligence, it may lead you to the need for change and systemized change, right? So when we realized we had 700 outstanding core team actions, I can guarantee you we changed the way that we set these actions and measured these actions, because it clearly wasn't effective. You might have some process that's been going on for quite a while. When you switch this stuff on, it might, you know, all of a sudden illuminate the fact that this process is not quite as effective as we thought it was. So just be prepared that, you know, it's going to celebrate all the stuff you're doing well. It really is. And that's going to be a great, great, great feeling. But it's also going to highlight the things that can be improved. And like we said, you can't not know that anymore. So just be prepared that there will be some immediate follow-up actions to some of the processes that aren't working particularly well. So if you go on to the next slide for us, please. Yeah, so this is where you get that itch, right? So you get hooked on knowing what's working, especially if you're one of those providers that are striving for continuous excellence, which I'm sure most people are. And you're going to find yourself going, it would be good if, and then you're going to have to start thinking about other things that you want to see and explore and dig deeper and deeper and deeper. So I'm going to show you some of the examples of what we've developed just off the back of like one piece of information. So if you come to the next slide for us, please. And again, when we were looking at our activity and our engagement and outcomes, you know, the result of these activities, we were originally just recording the activities that people did, which is fine. We were looking at things like duration. We were looking at things like what they did. And that's the data, right? That's just telling us what people are doing. But that's quite low tier. We want some information. We want some intelligence. So if you go to the next slide, please. We dug deeper. So this is Laura. She's the inspiration for our services, and she's very happy for us to share the sort of things that she gets up to. She's very keen for us to show how this system supports her and her core team. But we started to drill down. So rather than just a log of horse riding, for example, we task analyzed this and we broke this down as a very person-centered support. How does Laura go horse riding? You know, it's different for different people, right? Many people do the same activity, but how they do it and what they get from it and the support they need to achieve those outcomes is very, very different, as you'd expect. So we started to add things like different steps, like greeting the staff at the equestrian centre. Was this achieved? The level of support required to achieve that step. So ranging from full support, where you've kind of had to do it for the person, going all the way down to observational. And that used to say independent, but no offense, people like Theo used to go, oh, independent. Well, perhaps you don't need as many hours as we've commissioned. So we use the term observational there. We're still there, moral support. So if you go to the next slide, please. We can also drill deeper. And again, when you're thinking about your digital journey, right, think about what you actually need, because it is very easy to go deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But as we've alluded to, this shouldn't take any longer than any other reporting and recording measures that you have. Or if it does, the reward should be worth it, right? Because if this is taking minutes every day, those minutes are going to add up to hours, and that's hours taken away from person, you know, receiving support. So we've timed this, and each one of these completely takes 64 seconds to do. So it might seem like a lot, but you're just ticking those buttons on the screen. So in here, you know, we've drilled down, we've got things like the mood of the person, we've got the care to be delivered, we've got the level of support required for each one of these steps. And you can start to get a real good gauge of what's actually happening for this person. Now, in the background of all of these steps, we've also associated outcomes, right? So what is the result of the person doing this step? And if you go to the next page, please. This is what it looks like for some of the individuals we support. We've got loads of different outcomes associated to loads of different steps. And we can actually start to quantify and measure outcomes that people are achieving. So, you know, sensory needs met, being safe when out and about, a good community presence. These are generally good outcomes that you want to support people to achieve, right? So we can start to measure quantitatively what people are achieving. And if you go to the next slide, please. It's really important because people will be doing the same activities as their peers, but the outcomes that they achieve from these activities can be completely different, right? So person one, it might be around social skills, independent skills, community presence. Person two, it might be around physical fitness. And for person three, it might be about sensory needs. Now, identifying that and measuring that is only going to enhance the support delivery that you have. But it can ask, you know, it's going to leave you with more questions as well as, oh, how else can we meet these needs? And it's going to allow you to broaden the support that you actually provide to people. If you go to the next slide, please. Other ideas, we thought, oh, it would be nice if, well, with our capture of data, we know how many logs of a particular activity or event have been done. When we're working with the people that we support, they might say, oh, do you know, I'd really like to do food prep 3 or 4 times a week. It's a skill that I really want to be working on. Well, we can program that in the background. So when you're supporting this person, on the left, it tells you what they've done. On the right, based on the frequencies that the individual set or the core team has set with the person, it kind of suggests what you might want to do this week. Now, that's not prescriptive, but when you're thinking about people making meaningful choice and planning a good day, it's really, really abstract sometimes. You go, oh, what do you want to do today? It's really, really hard for people to make that decision sometimes. Well, this is a very useful prompt for people, both the individuals that we support and the colleagues providing support, right? It's a very useful tool. If you go to the next slide, please. One of those other questions we had was, oh, it would be good if, and this is measuring the amount of assistance the person required to achieve steps. So 1 being that full support that I told you about, and 5 being observational. So the higher the score, the less hands-on support required. You can easily see that this person has slowly needed more and more help over the year to achieve the same outcomes. So this is the sort of graph I might approach Theo with and say, hey, look, we're noticing that we're needing a bit more support to achieve this guy's same outcomes. We're needing a lot more support to do this. It might open up discussions around, you know, hours or whatever it is. But this sort of thing is useful to know. If you're looking at your rotoring, again, trying to make the most of those hours, you can look at this for activities, specific activities as well. And if you know that Joe Bloggs doesn't need much help with personal care, but he needs loads of help with food preparation, well, guess where you should allocate that additional support? Where the need is, right? You're being smarter with your hours. So this can inform your decision making across a plethora of different operational considerations. So if you go to the next slide, please. This is from a PBS perspective. Just the fact that you can very, very rapidly look at the time of day of incidents can save hours in functional assessments. I look at this graph and I think, 8 o'clock. Well, I'm going to go then and figure out what's going on there. I don't need to spend 12 hours watching the whole day. My initial observation is going to be at the risk, you know, the setting event of 8 o'clock. Oh, it's personal care in the evening. Right, I see. Well, let's just focus on that right now. Again, making smart decisions with your time. You know, there is a time cost in getting these digital platforms set up, right? There's a resource cost to that, but you're going to get that time back very, very, very soon. So not only are you going to save time in the long run, but it's going to make your support better. It just is. The data will inform your decision making, right? So if you go on to the next slide, please. I think this is the last slide, and this is just a case study of where, you know, we've only shown you a slice of the sort of data and information that we use and that care providers, anybody can use. But these were the amount of restrictive physical interventions for one particular complex young man, and it basically went down to 0. And we were able not only to measure that very, very quickly, because you can export the graph in a matter of seconds, but we can also look at, when we did the functional assessment, which outcomes were being met, what time of day, what health needs were there, what sensory needs were there. All that information is housed in one location. So again, it made it very, very effective to do very, very quickly. And I think that's it for now. But all I'd say is, you know, it's going to highlight things that work really, really well. And more importantly, it's going to highlight things that aren't working, and you can make significant improvements to that over time.
Luke, thank you. Fantastic there, both from yourself and Hazel, and so good to see things visualised, the data and the information and the insights, really fascinating. So we're going to move into our Q&A and panel session. We've got a couple of different questions coming through in the chat, but I just wanted to start by bringing colleagues back in and talking more broadly about provider-commissioner relationships. So I think Theo talked about some of the quick wins that come when you're moving on to digital care solutions, and certainly Luke, Hazel and maybe Melanie, it'd be great to get your perspective as providers about how do you engage with the commissioner, at what stage, and what's the expectations around go live. So how much do you do together communicating what's going to happen as you implement digital social care records? Maybe Theo, if you want to pop in first, and then anybody else.
Yeah, so I think from my perspective, Victoria, the role of the local authorities really got to be one of enabling, hasn't it? It's got to be putting the groundwork in, supporting providers where appropriate. I think I did notice on one of the questions on the chat was from a provider who's maybe not had that contact with the person who's leading on some of the funding bids, and with NHSX at the moment, they're very much going to be looking to put more funding into social care, and it's knowing. So the local authorities' role there is really to make sure that all the providers in their area are aware of what's going on, whatever sort of routes they've got to do that, and making those links, and where providers need that support and they need either funding or technical support, that is enabled to get there. So the commissioner, perhaps we're not going to do the doing, and that's best done by as outlined by Luke and Hazel, by the provider who know their clients, know their staff, know their service. But the local authority, our role as the commissioner, is that enabler. That's my thoughts on that.
Thanks, Theo. Melanie, any thoughts from yourself about working with the commissioner when you do implement digital?
I think I agree with Theo. You need to work with the commissioner, but you need to make sure you're talking to the right part of your local authority. You need to find your Theo, who may be loosely connected to adult social care or may have a wider role. Don't just talk to the normal commercial team, because they may not know what else is going on. And I think we need to have an open conversation at the beginning that there are some productivity gains from going digital, but actually we need those productivity gains to stay sustainable. They're not an opportunity for the local authority to reduce its budgets, because if you don't set that out at the beginning, you can end up with unintended consequences.
Yeah, very much so. Luke and Hazel, there's a couple of questions that have come in. So just to clarify, yours is a bespoke system. So it was developed by yourselves, for yourselves, to meet all of your specific needs. But there are some other questions coming through in the chat around the DSPT, so the Digital Accredited Software Suppliers List that Digital Social Care also publishes as well. So we've got 7 accredited and approved suppliers, and if you watch back through the masterclass with some of the colleagues that were asking some of those questions in the chat, there isn't one size fits all, and there's been a mixture of providers showcasing whether they either went down a bespoke system development or they use some of the other freely available market software, but there is no one way to knit everything together. So I think Theo started at the header of the call really saying some useful things about They're going to develop their own digital case management. They're also using digital solutions internally. We know that there is a divide between NHS, local authority and care providers, and no one system fits and integrates with everything. I can see Melanie's got her hand up.
Thank you. I think you're right, Victoria, and I think it's like anything else. There is an aspiration for NHS and social care to have a single care and support plan, but every person-centred care and support plan, but every provider knows that the care and support plan that we use day to day is different in every provider. You know, it's like Lidl isn't the same as Aldi, let alone Waitrose or the corner shop. So I think that the key things will be the same, but everybody needs something different. And I think I would say to providers, don't be afraid to say to the software provider that you're going to use, yes, that gives me most of what I need, but what I really want to know is X, because most of the systems now, if they're written well enough, if you're putting the information in, they can support you to get the information out. But it may be that nobody's asked to know who's wearing green socks on Tuesdays, but that might be absolutely critical to your service. And as long as you put the details of what colour socks are, you can have a report. So I think, and maybe that's again where working with your commissioners or working with your local care association, if you're not a big provider, comes into its own, or working with digital social care. Don't be afraid to say, this does most of what I need, but it doesn't do everything for me, because they can probably tweak it.
Thanks, Melanie. Really useful, helpful thinking there. Yeah, I think actually when you look across the whole of care and support services, there's only 40% that have gone through a digital care planning transformation journey so far. So there's lots of opportunity, and the system providers themselves are learning. So do make that part of the process. Really ask for what you need as part of your designing and planning. And I think Luke said at one point it's been 17 years in the making, so don't underestimate the amount of time it could take. I hope that it's not going to take 17 years for many other providers to get up and running now, but there's lots of these digital exemplars, which is why we're doing the masterclass, is showcasing the way forward. So giving you hopefully insights, helps and tips as to how to get it right first time and what to prepare for. One of the things for Luke and Hazel, you talked about the apprehension and user error. Certainly, I know I make mistakes all the time with digital things like my phone. So how, when you do go live, do you get staff back on board if there's either been an IT disruption or user error that means that the system hasn't quite performed in the way that they were expecting?
That's a good question. So, so for us, people that are using this day in, day out, so those providing direct support to people, it tends to be actually really slick. And, you know, we've always, he won't mind me saying this, so we have a gentleman who is not particularly tech savvy. You know, he's I think he's reaching his 70s, and he does struggle a little bit. I don't think he's got an Android phone. That's, you know, that sort of chap. And we will, you know, work with him at times to say, hey, look, does this make sense to you? Is this easily enough to flow through? So I think to reduce the likelihood of those user errors, it's that sort of thing that you have to have in mind. But you're very right in that those user errors can occur. Now, where we found it to be a breakdown is in the data we've extracted off the back end of things, right? So the input of information is usually the most simplest part, right? It's people just saying what they see, adding that log, ticking whether it's achieved, ticking how much help they needed. And it's a relatively simple process. Now, where we personally found potential issues is the data that we're trying to extract off the back of it. We're like, oh, crumbs, that we didn't consider this variable, we didn't think about this, so it's not quite right. And so for us, that's been relatively easily managed because we tinker around with it in the back end, right? So the manual input of the digital information remains the same, but the way we extract it off the back end is usually the thing that changes. But you're very right in that when we have had issues, so when we've rolled it out in a pilot scheme in a one particular location, and the feedback from those using it is just, look, this sucks, this does not work, or it takes too long, we'll sit with the people that are using it, and just don't feel like you are installing something or, you know, dictating a way that has to be done that people can't feed back on. The feedback of people using this is so valuable. Now, if they turn around and say, look, this diary took me 45 minutes today, that's a problem, because that's 45 minutes of time that could have been spent supporting a really complex individual. So I'd say meet with the people that are using it. And it sounds really obvious, right? But you just meet with them and talk it through. And there will be some things that you go, no, we need it this way doing, because this is the only way we can get X, Y, and Z. But it might be that you very, very quickly realize there's other ways of doing it. And I think the most trivial thing we've done is at times we've moved away from drop-down boxes and put radio buttons. And that's a really, really small change, but it's made the world of difference to many, many people. So as silly as it sounds, just talk to people and just get feedback from the people that are actually using this day in, day out.
I think what we've tried to do as well is limit free text, because one, you can't draw from the data of that because it is just free text. And we've also put on the ability to be able to talk, so they don't have to type it. If people have got dyslexia or things like that, they can talk, and it enters it into the tablet in the same way in the free text boxes. But also some of the alerts as well are actually within the form. So if I say that somebody's weight is 350 kilos, it's going to pop up with a little box that says, that seems a bit big. Are you sure that that's correct? So some of the user errors are prevented in the form itself through validation and stuff. And some of it is you can report afterwards. So it will get sent to me to say, it said that this person's put on 100 kilos. So my first job will be, is that right? Or is that a user error?
Yeah, useful practical tools. I think you use a stool sample chart as one of the mechanisms there, and I think, well, how many different ways would you potentially spell diarrhea if it wasn't a radio button that basically clicked it, because I certainly can't get it right when I have to spell it. And there's another fantastic question here, part thanks and praise to Luke and Hazel from Clive Parry. Great to see how the system supports making connections between the different tools in use in services such as the care plan and the risk assessments. It's also really good to see how the system enables providers to evidence outcomes. This is definitely an area we want to do better with. Can you talk a little bit about Micro, please? It appears to be an approach to providing care and support that is facilitated by digital solutions and fits well within the principles that underpin both active support as well as positive behaviour support.
No, I mean, great. I mean, so from my perspective, it absolutely does, because I'm a PBS manager, so I'm glad you picked up on that. So Micro is probably not necessarily the most effective thing for us to be looking at. So that's a methodology that we use and an approach to our organisation in general. So not necessarily around the digital platform, but what I would say, and rather than just bang on about home from home care for the next 30 minutes, but we have a unique model of care in which we have effectively created a division of labour for what is required for an effective support service. So we've looked at the different competencies and attributes of supporting a residential home. I think there's studies in Australia which identified something like 140 different areas to have an effective service, right? And that covers things like building maintenance down to money and all that sort of stuff. But yeah, Hazel and I are presenting from the clinical side of things. So I would be looking at outcomes in general. And what I would say is there are many different pieces of literature and research on what quality of life outcomes you should be measuring in. There's a lot of disagreement, academically around this. When we went on this journey to try and measure some sort of tangible outcome, we found there wasn't really a lot out there. There really wasn't. Many people seem to think that the outcome was going bowling, swimming, horse riding. It's like, well, that's the activity. The outcome is the result of doing that activity, right? And there's surprisingly little out there. So we developed it ourselves. We did work with some commissioners and some consultants on, really good people on trying to define those parameters and what we'd be looking at. And yeah, we found that the way that we were doing it worked for us. And as you have alluded to this entire way through, there isn't a one size fits all. And the reason why it's taken us 17 years to get to where we're at is because we've tried a lot of things, they ticked a lot of boxes, but maybe they didn't quite do what we needed it to do. Personally, we found that by developing our own, it means that all the different domains that we're looking at can interact and integrate and talk to each other. So we've got things like attributes and rotas and monies and meds and outcomes and all that sort of stuff. It's all in one place, right? So the system that we use is zone standard, and we have developed that ourselves. I'm not particularly IT savvy, and we're not an IT sales group, but we do have partnerships with people. So we have got partnerships with some schools and some NHS provisions. So more than happy to talk to people about what we do. It might not be that it's the best solution for you, because it takes a different way of doing things, and that's not right for everybody. But for some people it is. And you know, with you referencing positive behaviour support and active support, I think a lot of people struggle to measure those effectively, other than just looking at incident data, which is what loads of people do. So it's hard to answer that question right now, I think, but I am happy to discuss those particular things with people afterwards if that's of any use to anyone.
Thank you, Luke. And I can see Katie's also popped a list of the accredited suppliers in the chat for those people that are asking questions about different suppliers. So we've seen a range of these different service softwares through the masterclasses. So we've had colleagues from Person-Centered Software, Nourish being used in a couple of different examples. iPlanner was used before, and I think a few of the other services that are on there are Every Life, Eclipse by OLM, Care Vision and Care Control Systems. Switching back into the panel questions, one of the other things that we've talked about before was, as you go live, sometimes you want to switch everything on and move away from the old system. And I'm going to lead into another question in a moment, which is about CQC. So as providers, have you run a paper-based solution as well as the digital solution in tandem, or have you, from your CQC inspectors, been asked to keep a hard copy record of your care planning software within services as well, because sometimes that's applicable?
Yeah, so recently, I mean, our old digital records were just the same care plan typed up in Microsoft Word. That's our old way of doing it, and it was housed in like a SharePoint area. That, as well as Hazel said, would be the data side of things, where it's just a hard copy of something. We have recently gone completely digital, as in it's amalgamated into the IT platform that we have. We did slowly transition that, yeah. So we made sure we kept a copy. That when I said, you know, the IT error contingency plan thing, we didn't just switch off the old one and switch on the new one. It was kind of gradual and a phased approach towards doing that. So once we went fully live, though, we archived. We didn't get rid of it. We archived that information. We've not been asked for any hard copies since, and what we are able to do is just send the updated ones via PDF. I don't know if that answers your question, but it was transitory. We basically went from housing a Word document to it being built within the platform itself, where it could start talking to other things, and it wasn't just switch off, switch on. It was a phased approach, yeah.
I think to answer one of the other questions as well about how does the care plan fit with those outcomes, how do they interlink? What we've been able to do in the latest development in having the care plan is we all of the things, so you've got the top level need, and then underneath it you've got the things that you now need to do. So one might be a clinical task of doing a weekly weight. One might be the nutrition requirements for that particular individual. This is how you help them with a meal or how you prepare a meal. What we've done is we've linked those things back to the care plan that they best sit with. So the nutrition and digestion care plan will have with it associated that clinical task. So when you click on the clinical task, it's just showing you how to do that clinical task. But the system knows that that's part of the overarching nutrition and digestion care plan. But it's just showing the member of staff the bit that they need at that particular time. And what that means is, what we also found before was you could have an eating and drinking care plan, and you could have another nutrition one. And sometimes you were having inconsistency of information because somebody would date one and not the other. So what we've worked to try and do is make sure that there's only single entry, but it's pulled to wherever else in the system it's needed. So you put a clinical task in, and you say, this relates to these 3 care plans. So then when you PDF a care plan and say, if somebody asks for the nutrition and digestion care plan, you don't just get the top bit, you get everything that we've said relates to that. So it's kind of broken it down into building blocks, but you can still provide the whole if you need to.
Thanks. That was really helpful, Hazel. Melanie, you had an experience of digital care planning and then a changeover, so it would be really helpful just to illustrate what happened with your domiciliary care services.
Yes, I think in domiciliary care services, the first time we did it, we went digital. We digitised our rota system first, and then tried to get everybody to complete the care planning bits of the software. We never actually got all of the care planning bits fully populated. So when we migrated to a new system, we introduced the care planning part first and stayed on the old rostering system. And only when all of the care plans were populated did we let the rostering loose? And I think that's because from the office staff, from the coordinator's point of view, the rostering is the most important. And at the moment, with home care being so short of workforce, that can overwhelm everything. And people understand the benefit of that. Because one of the key things is staff to understand the benefit of why we're doing this. And if they're in traditional home care where they're a long way from the office, it's all new, they don't really get it. But if you can start to see that, show them how they can access information that helps them through the digital process, then they can buy into it. But I think it's definitely worth thinking, which bits of the system does the business need us to include, which will CQC be looking for, which works for our frontline staff and which works for our operational staff, before you draw up your program. And don't necessarily listen to the software provider, because the order they want you to do it in may not be the best order for your organisation.
Yeah, that's really helpful. And certainly we've thought about that in our previous masterclass, bringing people with you and thinking about the planning and the preparation. So what the provider wish list is and what your staff and people using services and families and residents want may not be in parallel or in the same system process as the software supplier. So definitely a really good point there. There's a fantastic question here from Diane Clayton in the chat, which is about interoperability and flexibility for providers who may need to change suppliers. So you may start off with one care planning software and some period of time down the road switch to another, which is perfectly reasonable. Katie is going to pop some guidance in the chat for everybody, but it's useful to look at where CQC are in terms of the quality and safeguarding standards relating to data protection, access and security levels within your digital care record management systems. I think, Luke, you brought this in early on, saying how many of your services are outstanding, and the digital data information has really helped contribute to that. So maybe you could talk to us a little bit, just briefly, about what CQC inspections look like now versus what they might have done pre-digital.
Sure. Okay. I mean, the biggest thing is, so we have most of our services are outstanding. It's 9 out of 11, which is great. We are consistently outstanding within responsive, and a large part of that is not only the model that I talked about, where we've done the division of labour, so specialists are looking at specialist areas, but the information, like you can't be responsive if you don't have the data, and the information, and use that to form intelligence. So it's been absolutely critical, especially for that key line of inquiry. So things like being able to, for example, with a CQC inspection, when you know that you've had this information and you've switched it on and all those red lights are flashing, you thought, oh bloody hell, but you've been actively working on remedying those, you can feel confident and happy when CQC turn up. And rather than being like, oh crikey, what are they going to find? You're like, no, we know what's not working. This is what we're doing about it. And I'd say that I think we quite enjoy the inspection, because it's sharing good practice. You get an outsider's perspective on what's working and what's not working particularly well. But it also we focus heavily on what's not working. But what it also really allows you to do is celebrate what is really, really working well. So we might, for example, think of a particular case study for a particular domain. So, in one of the CQC inspections we had recently, we had one young man who was experiencing a bit of a crisis. That example I gave on the use of restrictive physical intervention is a great example, where we don't want to be using physical skills 100 times a month. That's outrageous. That's an awful lot. And what we were able to really, really do is show what we've done about it, and show the outcome, and show the enhancement to this person's quality of life. And without using a digital platform, you might get there, but it's going to take a really, really long time, and it's just going to be less effective. And I'd just say to people, whatever you're looking at doing, I'd say any digital sort of support is going to be better than no digital support. Having that information, even if it's just quicker to access, is better, right? But yeah, because we have such a large amount of information, we're very, very easily able to show how we identified a particular challenge and what support practices we put in place to remedy that. And that's kind of what the Care Quality Commission want to see, right? We had a location that had we experienced some safeguarding concerns. We still got outstanding in safe because we were able to evidence, hey, we spotted this, we did this, and this is a result of that. And that's what they want to see. It's not just trying to sweep it under the carpet. It's be transparent and be open. Say, look, this isn't working as well as we'd like. this is what we've done about it, and here's the quantified result that we're able to show you in a pie chart or a graph or whatever it may be. So it's only going to support with any of those inspections and enhance the support you're delivering. What I would say is, if you're trying to use digital to get outstanding, it isn't going to work, right? You use digital information to enhance your support, and then you get an outstanding rating because you're delivering exceptional support. If you try and do it just to get outstanding, it's not going to work. It's an enhancement of what you're doing. It's not a way of getting outstanding without doing the work.
Thanks, Luke. Yeah, absolutely. You're outstanding before the digital solution comes along, because you're doing things differently and you're really thinking about the person supported and their needs. Melanie, your hand's up.
I think you're right, Luke. Digital solution can't make an outstanding service outstanding, but it does make it a lot easier to prove it, particularly these days when CQC would like to be in and out as quickly as possible, but with the evidence that they need that you're providing a good or outstanding service. They really don't like it if it's all on bits of paper, even if the outcome is outstanding.
Yeah, thanks. One final technical question, and then I'll just come back to all the panel for the final question, and we'll move on to our next section. There's a question here for Luke about staff accessing their records. How do they access the software and input into their records?
Oh, great. Yeah. So we have homes or tablet devices within each location. So it'll be like an activity phone or a tablet device like an iPad. And that's really helpful because we also include media as well. So we might take videos or photos of people doing really cool stuff, and we can upload that as part of the daily diary. So yeah, phones and tablets, which is why we've moved away from things like drop-down boxes, because it's harder to scroll down on those. You know, be real simple things like a radio button, just tap it on the screen.
Brilliant. Thanks, Luke. Okay, final question to everybody. So all of this costs money. From the provider perspective, as well as the commissioner perspective, what can we do to support one another to go through the digital transformation journey? I think there's also been a really useful question that we answered earlier on from Mariana. And DHSC have got specialist funding to support providers in their ICS region. So Katie's popped that email address for DHSC in the chat if people haven't been able to access their ICS funding support, or people in their locality. But Theo, how can we support providers from a council perspective with additional money potentially to support digital transformation?
Yeah, so first thing to say is it's absolutely within the council's, it's in the council's interest that providers that are working within their area are making best use of funding, digitising, and you've seen from the presentation that Luke and Hazel have given the power of the data that they're able to get hold of, that insight into people's lives that's able to have an impact in terms of the care that they can give, and really personalised care as well. So I think I'd probably go back to what I said before. It's the council's role. I would see it as being an enabler, making sure that the funding gets to the right place, making sure that if they do have funds, not all councils will have funds at the moment. A lot have had funds, though, however, in the past year or so from the government to support COVID-related support to care providers, and as have the County Council in Lincolnshire, and we have used that funding to fund support to care providers in some cases where we can prove, reducing visits into establishments, enabling care providers to be more effective and more efficient. So I would see it as a council's role to be that enabler, getting hold of the funding, making sure that the voice is heard within the local ICS. NHSX are falling over themselves to fund and invest in social care. So they're going to be very receptive to providers and local authorities and NHS colleagues coming forward to seek that out. So in the first instance, I would contact your commissioner at the local authority and ask them the question, where are they with that?
Thanks, Theo. And Melanie, from your perspective, what can providers gain from care associations in terms of support for funding?
I think I agree with Theo, and if you're not big enough to make that contact on your own, then try to do that. Just turn that off. Try doing it with your local care association, because then it's easier to work with the local authority. I would say a couple of things. Remember that the biggest, often in terms of efficiency, the person who benefits most is the NHS, which is why they want to share the money with us. So don't be afraid to go ask. But also don't just look at what is the health information, or even what is the health and care information. Speaking as a provider, I think it's important that you get back office efficiencies as part of the digital journey as well, so that we're using our scarce resources to deliver care and support to people, not fill in spreadsheets, not process wages manually, all that kind of things. And often when you look at the NHSX offer, they don't think about things like that because they did that 30 years ago. So it's about thinking of yourselves. You are a business, and if you're not sure how to work that, talk to primary care, because they are the same as care providers. They have to have more money coming in than going out. So when they go digital, they didn't just go digital for the commissioner's needs or for the system's needs. They also went digital for their staff needs and for their service users and for their business. Things like lone working. The cheapest, simplest, most reliable way to support your staff who might be lone working in the dark or in difficult areas is to do it through the smartphone. But that, I've never seen that on anybody's proposal to NHSX, because you either did it years ago or you don't think about it.
Yeah, thanks, Melanie. Think about everything that's digital, the smartphone in your hand and all of the back office function. Really good advice at planning to go live. From a home care perspective, obviously there was a big budget in terms of setting up your digital software solution and digital care planning. Do you think you've realised the benefits of the amount of money that was potentially spent through the period of transformation and go live?
That's a different question. I'm not too sure. I have to speak to Paul, our managing director. I know it might sound weird. I don't know if he's as fussed about money as a lot of managing directors, but I think he's obviously a businessman. I don't know if we've recouped it, but I would say it's certainly enhanced the support being delivered. I'm afraid the financials is not something I'm particularly au fait with, I'm afraid, but I think it's made
an honest answer, which is this is going to cost money, but
it is. I think it's made business sense because we're still doing it. So I think that's my answer to that one. I'm not too sure on the rest, I'm afraid.
No, thank you. Thank you, panel. Fantastic thoughts, feedback, huge amount of information there to be absorbed as well from all the different questions that have come in. I'm going to hand back to Katie, and she's just going to talk you through a few of the tips and resources that we've got through Digital Social Care website for providers. Do stay with us for a few moments, and then we're going to come back and summarise and wish you well.
Thanks, Victoria, and hi, good afternoon, everybody. I'm not Claire Sutton, I'm Katie Thorne. Unfortunately, Claire's internet has gone down, so if anybody's with TalkTalk, apparently they're having outages right now. So just wanted to let you know a little bit more about digital social care and the support that we offer. Just as a reminder, we are all from the social care sector ourselves. It's fully funded by the NHS, so there's no cost at all to any care provider if you want to talk to us. We're on a telephone helpline and email service. We create guidance both in video and text formats on a variety of different kinds of technologies, starting with things like the Data Security and Protection Toolkit and NHS Mail, through to around internet connectivity, how to use mobile phones safely, whether that's a bring your own device policy that you're running, or if you're providing staff with their own phones and tablets at work. We also produce success stories, so we work with care providers like Home from Home Care and others who have already been through the digital transformation process to ask them to share their story, their experiences and their lessons learned. We have a newsletter that goes out fortnightly, That keeps you up to date with everything that's going on. If you aren't already on our newsletter, I would recommend it. We can give updates on the Digitising Social Care Records programme and of course any future masterclasses that we're running. Funding is on here. We don't currently have any funding available, but we are signposting to funding, which is available to the sector. Theo has mentioned quite a few of those already. If you weren't aware, there is also the Rural Gigabit Voucher Scheme. If you're in a rural area and you have issues with your internet or your broadband in your business, you can apply to get a voucher of up to £3,500 from the government to help fix that, but you don't have to pay back. So that's one you may want to look out for. And the government has also just launched their Help to Grow digital scheme, where you can get some money and discounts off purchasing certain kinds of software, not care record software, I'm afraid, but more of the administration types. I'll pop some links into the chat for you. We also run lots of events and webinars like this on a wide variety of topics, and host the assured supplier list, which we've already put into the chat. All of the work that we do is really founded on research with people in the sector. It's really important to us that social care providers are driving our agenda. This is some of the research we've done over the last 18 months or so to inform our work programmes, including our user research for Joining Up Care, which is the basis for quite a lot of the NHSX's Digitising Social Care Records programme. And finally, for me, just to think about what's next. If you are thinking about buying and implementing a digital social care record, there is a lot of support available to you. So there's the assured supply list, there's care provider masterclasses like the one we're on now. There are another 4 of these to go into the new year. There's also guidance tools and templates, which will be being published shortly to help you make decisions around what would be the best record solution for you, because every business is different. And you can always contact us on our helpline as well. Also, to help shape masterclasses in the future, just to let you know, when you leave this webinar at the end of today, you will just get a pop-up 1-question survey just asking how you found the session. It really helps us if you provide feedback on how you found it, so we know what to do in our next masterclasses. Our next 4 that will be starting again from January around what is a data protection officer and do I need one? We'll then be looking at embedding technology into the workflow, a whole session on contract management and how you work with your software suppliers around contracting. And finally, looking at retrofitting technology, so in old buildings. So if you've got an old building which doesn't necessarily have the infrastructure for a lot of technology, what you can do to help with that. So that's the last of my slides. Victoria, if I could pass back to you.
Thanks, Katie. Thanks very much. Just in summary, because we love a cracking Christmas and it's only 4 more sleeps to go, we've had a fantastic masterclass session, so thank you for joining us. Go Live can be full of interpretation. Even with the best plans in the world, things can and will go wrong with digital social care record implementation. Don't underestimate the time that it needs and reassure your staff all the way throughout the process. I'll be back on the next masterclass in March, and my colleagues at NCF and NCA will be taking things forward in January. In the meantime, we want you to just see Perfect Christmas. This was developed by Home from Home Care colleagues about all social care staff, all key workers. We're hoping to make this a Christmas #1. We're going to pop in the chat the link so you can download it on Spotify or other mainstream apps, and have a fantastic Christmas. We'll see you all again soon. Thanks.
We know this time is the perfect time of year to see family, friends, and loved ones, and all the key workers go that extra mile to make Christmas magical and fun. It doesn't matter if the snow don't fall It doesn't matter if all the plans go wrong, because our perfect Christmas is the one we share. Together we show we care. We're always hoping for a white, white Christmas, and for all those Christmas songs to be playing. And there's no doubt that it's the happiest time of year, and we'll make it more special just by being here. It doesn't matter if the snow don't fall. It doesn't matter if all the plans go wrong, because our perfect Christmas is the one we share. Together we show we care. First to put my paper hat on, and there's no doubt that it's the happiest time of year, and we'll make it more special just by being here. It doesn't matter if the snow don't fall. All the plans go wrong, because our perfect Christmas is the one we share. Together we show we care. It doesn't matter if the snow don't fall. It doesn't matter if all the plans go wrong. Christmas with you and me.
Together we show we care.
Christmas with you and me.
Together we show we care.
Christmas with you and me.
Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, Luke and Hazel, for the fantastic presentation. Thank you, Theo and Melanie. We hope you all have a most amazing Christmas and wonderful New Year. Thank you again for your time and listening to us. Some great comments, Carl, Sharon. Thanks, everybody. Have a lovely, restful Christmas. I hope you have a bit of time off, and stay safe, and we'll see you in the new year.